Yeah.
Neighbor place. I'm not gonna be here. That you guys are doing.
Oh, do you want Polk County let's do right now? I am so whatever. There's all of these plugging that right there. Well, affected at all. And acts are well. They just had it all. If it's all where it goes, it will automatically. Automatically up the dispatch call. Polk County won't let us do it because the IT guys do it. So Solomon, I think, got to lose with Mark Palmer. That he works at everybody before. Because of the get ahead of it.
That's what we did. Well, because when I was sitting there, like upright, we got hung up on. I mean, I had a headset on and everything. This lady did. We got hung up on twice on saying, I don't know if these kids are messing around, but the first time it said something about an OD. Wonderful. She's like, did you hear OD? And I was like, yeah. And so she called back. Then they hung up on her. Yeah. 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 Kind of was.
Then also the officer show up with what's knowing they already have an idea of
Right.
right.
Yeah.
But we still do that, but it'd be nice if we go right away.
Yeah.
Instead of us having to fly.
Yeah. No, I agree.
But that's Kevin.
Papers online.
Go ahead and call the meeting to order.
Probably gonna take
Ask for approval of the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. The agenda is approved. Anything related to corrections, clarifications, or minutes, otherwise I'll entertain a motion to approve it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, we'll move on to reports and discussion. Freight plan update, Janet.
Morning. As you know, MPO staff has been working on a plan. I can tell you today that a draft has been posted on our website. As a reminder, the purpose of the freight plan is to examine how the freight system impacts central Iowa. Throughout this process, we developed this plan to some data analysis along with stakeholder engagement. Starting with our technical committee, we engaged with them on multiple occasions, first through a survey that was submitted, as well as during our January and February meetings. We engaged them to map freight impediments and discuss concerns relating to freight. From there, MPO staff presented us the Freight Advisory Council. We got a lot of input from stakeholders. This helped inform the safety chapter of the freight plan, as well as the trends chapter known as planning security. And then lastly, the MPO hosted 4 working group sessions with freight stakeholders as well as committee members to help inform the development of the plan. We had representatives from the Iowa Interstate Railroad, we had representatives from the transload facility, as well as the airport and Ruan, as well as the Iowa DOT, and our very own landlord here was represented. The plan is outlined as follows, starting with the introduction. We discuss regional freight planning as well as stakeholder process and the history of freight planning here at the MPO. It also includes the purpose and the outline of the plan. Following, second chapter is the existing conditions, starting with the networks. We looked at trucking, rail, pipelines, and aviation. After that, we looked at freight infrastructure. So these are freight generating facilities. This is distribution centers, warehouses, as well as transload facilities. And then lastly, we looked at impediments. So those were identified by our technical staff, as well as Iowa DOT identified bottlenecks, which is related to trucks, and choke points, which is related to rail. And lastly, we identified rail crossings. From there, we move on to the safety chapter. This is broken out into looking at truck, rail, and pipelines. At this time, aviation was brought to attention that there wasn't a safety concern regarding that, involving freight. So starting with the truck analysis, we looked at crash data, as well as that high EV network that was presented back in February. After that, we looked at rail, and it's had 3 different categories. First one was train accidents. So this includes derailments and obstructions. We moved into looking at grade rail incidences. And then lastly, we looked at hazmat routes. For the final analysis here, we looked at pipelines, so that's hazardous facilities and the hazardous commodities that are being moved across the region. The 4th chapter is our planning considerations. So these are our trends. There are 4 categories here. The first one was looking at safety. As you know, at the MPO, zero is at the forefront of the work we do. This inspired that safety chapter, and also was something that is brought up with great stakeholders that is important to them. So within the safety section, we look at truck parking that was brought up by Iowa DOT, as well as corridor planning. So this was brought up by Iowa District Rail Line. Essentially, is being considered land uses along rail or truck corridors. From there, we look at the economy. So we look at workforce. We look at same-day delivery. We look at air freight trends, and we look at vehicle dimensions. The legislation surrounding that is in that section. From there, we move on to automation electrification. So this is a transition into automated trucks and electric trucks. So that's discussed in that section. And then lastly, future projects is presented by the Iowa DOT. So this is included in the rail plan, in their 5-year plan. And these are projects they have identified in our planning area that's included in this section. And then lastly is our implementation section. This is what the MPO will lead and support on in the freight space based off our planning process. There's 3 main areas that we found. There's a list of action items in the implementation chapter. I encourage you to take a look at that. We found 3 main areas that the MPO will lead and support on is with rail crossings, with truck routes, and truck parking. Next steps for this plan is there's going to be a public comment period. During this time, we're going to have some plan design updates, as well as implemented feedback that was provided at our final working session last Wednesday, as well as any comments from the public. And then our freight plan will be brought back for approval to the MPO committee in August. Are there any questions?
I could ask, how can our communities best collaborate with the MPO?
So first, feedback super important. So them making comments on what they need and see from this. When we met with our working group session, one of our technical staff committees found benefit in looking at crash data and the breakdown of that. So that's an appendix item that we have that helps kind of allocate where heavy truck crashes have occurred. So through the high entry network that was created and that truck crashes, that's a way that member communities can see their role in that freight safety aspect. But we're always open for collaboration further on as well, and definitely through the implementation process. Do you have any ideas specifically?
Well, so is that largely through like the technical committee or what committee or?
Yeah, so
Okay.
a lot of these action is through the technical committee, but policy support is always.
You don't matter, but maybe a little. I know where it's in. Yeah. I would say if you hear from businesses in your community or citizens that say, here's the issues that we're seeing, whether there's citizens saying, here's trucks that are running down the street that shouldn't be, or businesses saying we just don't have the infrastructure, that kind of stuff, which you might hear about, would be good to know if you can decide that and make sure that gets in the plan. Thank you.
Yeah, we had a situation with like my Marzetti's right in the middle of town, and they go to cold storage all the time. And the truck route would be out to the bypass up to the interstate back over first down. And we work with them and say, if you don't have that many trucks, you can do it this way. So it's kind of stuff where we just kind of open the business. And yeah, they analyze the safety part of that. And it's not making thank you for that.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense because part of what we were talking about during the work group was making sure that the truck routes actually connect between communities. Communities should be cooperating. One was brought up as an example in Des Moines where Polk County changed the truck route, didn't inform Des Moines, and suddenly all these trucks are going down an area that wasn't considered. Or
Over by Easter Lake.
yeah, and then you have these impediments, you know, that you might have a restriction that only 5-ton trucks can cross a particular bridge, and we're sending trucks from another community that weigh more than that. Just that continuity of making sure everybody's on the same page, if you will.
It's Polk County to screw things up.
Okay, thanks, Janet. Appreciate it. Next item is active transportation plan update, Addison.
Good morning. Good morning, right? Staff is excited to announce that we are nearing completion and internal review of the chapters of the active transportation plan, the purpose of which is to define the MPO's role in active transportation for the region. So that includes on-street and off-street facilities and the transit connections that bind them together. Development of the plan involved review of the original active transportation plan published in 2009, Connect, review of the Iowa DOT bike and pedestrian plan, and regional active transportation work that's taken place over the past 15 years. Last summer, we had our walkabouts with member government staff, and that, as well as other stakeholder engagement, influenced the public engagement section of the plan, stakeholder engagement, which included the survey, some outreach activities in the community, our walk audit workshop in the Dogtown District, and the active transportation roundtable. Data mapping and project solicitation through the TCIP process has influenced the plan as well, and that'll all be reflected in the chapters that we will review, I hope. You've seen this before, but the plan is outlined in the 4 chapters. We have our introduction chapter, very similar to the freight plan, which outlines what the MPO is, its role in active transportation planning, work that's been done in the space over the past 15 years, and for the existing conditions chapter is broken out along on-street facilities, which would include bike lanes, pedestrian facilities, such as sidewalks, and our off-street facilities like trails and trail crossings, and of course the transit connections that bind them together. Third chapter will discuss stakeholder and public engagement, and then the implementation chapter will lay out the steps to implement the plan along the 4 goals of our long-range transportation plan, mobilizing tomorrow. In that implementation chapter, there are 4 main areas we've identified where our staff and leaders support further analysis. Of course, this is not exhaustive. There are plenty of other elements that we hope you'll review. Corridor walk audits aligned with our Vision Zero roadway safety audits, supporting regional planning efforts for regional trail crossings, encouraging active transportation elements in our SCBG funding process, and developing that regional level of stress analysis and perhaps considering incorporating that into future SCBG and TAP funding. Plenty of other action items. I encourage you to look them over in the implementation chapter. There will be a public comment period, and we'll take in feedback during that period, update that with any other planned active transportation projects that have come across our radar, and refine the design of plans. Thanks. We'll bring interconnect back for committee approval in August, and we're looking forward to incorporating your feedback. Happy to take any questions right now.
Hearing no questions, we'll go ahead and move on then to the 2027 to 2030 transportation improvement program.
Thank you. We are well past the tip of the iceberg here, and the federal fiscal year 27 through 30 TIP has been drafted and will be submitted to the Iowa DOT on June 15th. This is on our website. We encourage member cities and agency staff to review the project list to make sure that everything looks good. Project descriptions are in order, funding is programmed into the correct years, so on and so forth. That can be found starting on page 50, I believe page 63 for DART projects. Our public comment period will run for 30 days from June 5th to July 6th, and we'll be hosting a morning public input meeting on Thursday, June 25th here at our office. And in the past, we would typically host this meeting at night and see very little attendance. So we're hoping to see a bit more with the morning meeting this year. Happy to take any questions on that tip now.
One thing I'll add is in the tip, there's a self-certification. We don't have that on the agenda here today, but next week at our policy meeting, there will be an approval for the self-certification, which is the part that says we acknowledge that we are doing what we're supposed to do as an MPO, meeting all the federal requirements, and that typically accompanies the tip when it's in that in. So just a heads up on that.
Thank you. Next item is multimodal economic impact study. Marcus.
Thank you. I cut a bunch of the slides related to results, so should be less boring than normal. So just a reminder, back in February of 2025, we contracted with Metro Analytics to do the study. They got bought by a firm called Jack Boston Associates. Jack Boston Associates are the ones that are completing it now, and we're nearing the end. A little bit more background. So if we look at what we're going to cover in the plan, we have our MPO planning area boundary, that blue line here. This red line is actually our travel demand model. So we model outside of our planning area so that we can capture some of those commute trips that are coming into our region. This study covers all of the area that's included in this red boundary because it has how modes and commuters are moving in and out of the region, impact projects and
There was some outside economic data that was pulled in, it's called in-plan. It's broken down at the zip code level. It's accessible to any community who wants to look at it. It has information about employment and economic outputs. So really useful data. And then, of course, the whole purpose of this was to quantify direct and induced benefit from projects. So why are we doing this again? We had finished the long range transportation plan, and one of the questions that always comes when we finish these plans is, okay, great, we have 20 years of project. What's the return on investment? And we kind of shrug and say, well, it's good because we'll be doing these projects and they're good for the community, but we didn't really have hard and fast numbers. This helps us provide some hard and fast numbers on what are those economic benefits that we'll see. So there are typically 4 types of economic studies that you can do. Benefit cost studies, these are done for grant applications. They tell you the cost you need to spend this much, and the user benefits are over here in X, and you compare those two to get an answer. We have economic impact studies, those who say the next money and results in improvement. Fiscal impact, look at outlays, compared to that. The trade studies are much larger and look kind of nationally at what's going on. We fall into this category of kind of economic and fiscal impacts here. So it really kind of bridges those two. It does pull data from benefit costs study approach into it. We're sitting somewhere in this area. And just as a reminder, there are 4 types of changes that we look at. Direct stimulus. This is money that is being spent on the project that stimulates growth through investment. There are cost savings to the users, so this is that benefit cost analysis. Improved market access. This is gaining access to more employees, gaining access to more markets so that you have sell and trade goods. The business traction is bringing actual businesses into the region. It's not shifting businesses around the region, new business traction. Generally, I would show the result here. You'll see the result in many tables next week and policy. But I think the key metrics that we're looking at for the multimodal system as a whole. When we look at our long range transportation plan, we generate, $4 of business output for every dollar invested. That's a pretty good return. USDOT, if we're looking at the cost benefit analysis, if you get over 1, it's seen as a successful project. So when we look at our whole plan, we're doing really well. By 2050, transportation improvements will enable businesses to access expanded labor pools, which generates over $280 million additional average annual productivity, which is great. So again, the more we invest in our transportation networks, the more benefit we'll see through business attraction and access to labor. And then just some other of those 25-year outputs as we look at kind of our long-range transportation plan. $9.4 billion in total business output, $5 billion in GDP growth, $2.8 billion in household income increases. So that's a big one. And then we have an additional 1,900 jobs in the peak employment year, and that gets carried through in that 25-year. So we're seeing more jobs being created just from the investment in our transportation system that we're identifying. Big deal. And that last one, you can see there, $843 million tax revenues divided up between federal, state, and local government. So really, really positive output for our multimodal system. I think the key is we need to continue to invest in transportation to be able to see the benefits that are shown here. It's going to be a challenge if we're also talking about changes in budgets and things like that. One of the key pieces that is more recent would be these specific impacts. And this got highlighted by DART commission meeting recently. So the way that this analysis works is that they're comparing it to their existing system at the start of the study. So what we were running a few months ago, and now we're currently transitioning into the new network. So it's comparing the existing or network now to the new network that we're moving towards. And what you can see is that we look at the benefits that we're seeing in performance. We do see some increases for performance benefit in the new network as compared to the existing or older network. So each dollar you put in returns a little over $1.48. Positive benefit there. Good change. Business output side. So same thing, we're comparing, how much businesses are able to sell and produce other goods and services for every dollar that is spent on transit. In the existing network, with the older network, it's just over $2. Now it's slightly higher at $2.15. So again, the new network is leading to slightly better returns from the business. Workforce participation. I think that this is an important one. Again, comparing existing to the new network, you see an increase in about 1,200 jobs in the future. And then you can see that produces additional output and additional GDP. So there's some good benefit that comes from this change from the existing network to their new network that we're looking to capture. And then one of the pieces that was studied briefly in the transit aspect of this project was kind of the benefits that we see, the fiscal impacts that we see. Why you should continue to invest in transit. Employers have reported higher absenteeism turnover and higher overtime costs with when you don't have transit, but also when you look at things like persons experiencing homelessness crises, emergency shelters, $10,000, $25,000. You can say $30,000 to $50,000 for law enforcement. Healthcare costs, you can save in healthcare costs, behavioral health services. So there are these savings that are experienced when you invest in transit, and this is, I think, really powerful information when looking at different opportunities for how you're going to spend tax dollars. So, any questions on this? Again, next week I'll go into a lot more detail with charts and graphs and things and maps. Can't wait. And it'll be so exciting. So fun.
Now, how does the MPO use all of the data that's been accumulated in the study going forward? What is the?
Yeah, that's a great question. Part of it is we're going to start looking at different projects that are included in our long range plan and try to understand what is the economic benefit of each of those. And then as we move into the next long range plan, we'll incorporate the same analysis so that before we finish the plan, we'll hopefully have, we'll be able to say, here's the benefit that we're seeing from the investment that we just planned.
And does that help pull down additional dollars, or does it help generate more community support, or just informing a plan?
I think that it can do all three, right? It can inform the plan, it can help get additional dollars through grant opportunities. If we already know what the benefit cost is going to be of projects, we can target projects that are going to perform better for federal grants. And then from a community perspective, it supports all of our work, especially around transportation projects. Because you're able to say to your constituent that the investment that you're making in transportation is going to return X dollars for X dollars. The reports are online. The transit reports are currently not online, but if you would like to review them, we can provide access to them. Any questions?
Thanks, Marcus. Any informational discussion on the items listed on A through E? Hearing none, we'll go on to other items. Staff has a few.
Yeah, we can touch on a couple things. Last week, while a few of us were in DC, we held the donuts, which we've mentioned to you a few times. That went well. I don't want to speak for it because I wasn't here, but I don't know if Marcus or anybody else wants to add color commentary to that.
Had donuts. They were delicious. There were lots of great questions about the tool and how projects would be selected and things like that. So I thought it was very good.
Speaking of DC, like I said, a few of us were there. We did have meetings with our, like typically with our congressional delegation. There was a transportation forum or a panel discussion that had a lot of good conversation and hearing from some experts on what is likely to happen with transportation reauthorization. So that happened as well. The kind of the typical things. So there's questions, or I know you were also there. If you anything you want to share, but kind of the standard DC trip from our perspective, anyway. I think that's it from staff. It was very, excuse me, it was very good. It was very positive reception from our delegation. We reflected back on overseeing our reauthorization bill. Yeah, we're doing it. Like 5 days. On the Feature 435 front, we reflected that we really appreciate seeing that language on the House side bill. Sherry Kusin-Brasky's office was saying she thought it would end up in the Senate version of the bill. She said about 5 times that she talked to the right committee and isn't worried about that change in those. We're kind of apply pressure to get it done sooner rather than later. Limited influence there, but the sooner the Senate bill is introduced, the better our causes. More than likely will go into next month.
We don't expect the Senate version before the election.
It might be introduced, but
Maybe. And that's the pressure that one of the offices told us to apply. It would be really helpful to have the Senate bill introduced. But what we're hearing from the Senate side is that that's going to happen.
there's a lot of steps and a lot of committees that this has to go through. And I think of the 8 committees, only one has taken action really. So and that's on both sides. So there's a lot of work that happened there.
All right, Lynn, I know you got an item.
Please. Basically an MPO modal proposal. The Congressional Research Service finds complete streets of multimodal lines that accommodate all users, pedestrians, bicyclists, transit riders, and motorists. The MPO focuses is on all types of transportation, including all users, on all types of streets, sidewalks, and trails. The Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act requires states and metropolitan planning organizations to develop complete street policies, prioritization plans. We, the MPO, has responsibility for safe streets for all, Vision Zero, and other transportation safety programs. While not clearly defined in this charge are the various types of e-motor conveyances likely to fall within this definition. We and many other groups have identified e-motor conveyances as an upcoming public safety issue. I think we all will continue to see an increase in the number of serious injuries, potentially fatalities before this year is over. And we have several disjointed efforts underway, but no centralized effort or work group. I propose the MPO create a task force or work group to address this issue comprised of local jurisdictions, elected law enforcement, parks directors, county conservation, public health, and hospitals, technical committee, and bicycle and pedestrian coalitions, moto business representatives with the DOT. The proposal would be to fast track a basic set of rules that we could all agree upon, such as the same basic bicycle regulations for obeying traffic laws, warning bicycle lights for night riding, etc., to create some continuity among local jurisdictions and provide a model by late summer, and an education campaign with the media outlets to emphasize the concerns that we have, which is already ongoing. See it on TV already. The second effort would be to explore statewide and other MPO efforts to define and support and lobby for more comprehensive legislative approach for the next legislative session. So I would like to see us get on top of this sooner than later. get something created within the next 30 days, have those groups meet, see what we can do. Create some kind of a model ordinance. It's very basic. That won't be real controversial, to get the ball rolling. And then that same group work on something that we can propose to state legislature that we can work on over the next year.
I think we're already there. I mean, there is a coordinated effort. The police chiefs have been working together for quite some
Well,
time.
I fully understand that, but many of these ordinances are being questioned by the bicycle groups, et cetera, and you're getting now the people that are selling these questioning those ordinances and with bicycle groups.
And how it works. Yeah, I mean,
Has anybody actually got it? They're going to reading of an ordinance.
we're getting close. And I don't think,
Get there?
yeah, the MPO doesn't have to step in for this. I think we're well on our way. Aiken's already passed theirs. Waukees gonna be passing theirs. So we're gonna have, whether you call it a model ordinance or not, we're gonna have plenty of language out there that other communities can replicate. And we've worked pretty closely with the Bike Collective on all the language. So I don't think that the MPO needs to step in for that specifically. Now, the State House piece of it, maybe there's some legitimacy to that, but I don't personally think that the MPO needs to step in at this point, because we're already down the path.
Here's the problem too. We can write all the ordinances we want, but if you can't enforce them, you can't track these people down. You can't enforce them.
And I fully understand.
So one of the big problems is you throw an ordinance on your books and then you don't do anything with it. That's almost worse because when the law comes in, well, how many pictures do you write? None. How many drones?
I was gonna say, let's get drones.
Yeah. No,
You know where they live?
that's exactly how we do it.
Yeah.
But until we can all pretend like we're gonna be doing something here with these ordinances, but it's just pretend. Until the state does something, we're all just,
I disagree a little bit, Dean. You have to have an enforcement mechanism in place.
I don't
By
disagree.
having that in place, now what we can do is we can go with our SROs in the schools and talk to the parents and say, this is illegal.
I don't disagree with you.
Yeah, no,
No, you misunderstood. Maybe I didn't point it. But what we're saying is that it's gonna take some time.
Yeah, no doubt.
And I don't see this as an MPO issue. I see this as a state and a city issue. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do something. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, I had said something, supporting all signs were wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, I had said something.
We
supporting-
don't regulate cars here. How do you regulate trucks here? We do roads here. We do bridges here.
If I can say something, this has come up and I've heard it from both sides of groups, and so I'm glad this conversation is happening. I'd say, from our standpoint, through the active transportation plan that Addison talked about from our safety work, we recognize this as an issue. I guess my question is, what would we be doing that's different than what's already been happening with Flexa? And if we can understand that, happy to jump, and obviously it's up to you guys to provide the direction to us. But that would be the question that I wrestle with, what would be different than what's already been going on.
It's our councils and our police chiefs that are dealing with this.
Right.
Not MPO.
By having an organized effort to take it to our state legislators, maybe that, there is some value there.
Right.
I like that idea.
And I would add, helping the member jurisdictions understand what has occurred. I mean, I can sit around the table and I heard Todd, I think from Ankeny a month ago, say, hey, we got Mayor Clark saying we're exploring a second one. And we hear it here. Honestly, it's a little piecemeal. I don't know exactly what Ankeny did. I don't know exactly what Walkie's doing, or Ted, you guys read this morning, you guys move forward something. Being a resource to aggregate or something, I think that could be helpful. But I'm with you, Dylan, in terms of what more could this organization do hasn't already done in terms of working with the police chiefs. And just because even if we do come up with an additional model, it's going to be Clive doing their own tweak of it, Waukee doing their own tweak of it. That's I feel like where we're at. I might be wrong.
No, I agree with you.
I think it's kind of well.
We sat back and we're watching what he did. We're watching what Ankeny did. And now we can see what Clive's doing. And now our police chief's saying, well, we got to move on this. And so we're looking at it's all out there. We're all looking at it. It's already there.
I mean, it's getting to be even more of an issue now that school's out, right?
Yeah.
The kids are out there even more now than in the past. So we're hearing about it. I get calls on it every week.
Me and you both, 4-wheelers on the bike trails, things like that. Not just the e-mobile bike. I mean, I got
I got motorized
It's
vehicles
free for all.
rolling down the bike trails and people filming them, and you can't hear them because they're electric.
They have a different.
No, these are gas powered.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, these are
And it's up to us cities to
Step up and make this.
and start enforcing it.
hard as we can.
Part of it is we don't have enough officers to go out on the trail, golf carts and things to try to enforce it.
Yeah, we're not gonna have an officer out there with a radar gun.
Right. I mean, the drones would be helpful. If you can track them and send a patrol officer.
You have an army of them.
Right. If Polk County would get out of our way so that we could actually go up on a dispatch call and Gavin Schneider, then we could really be active.
The other thing to point out is we do have funding through the Safe Streets for All grant that we received, the supplemental planning one. There's a element of that is for safety policy review and development. So this could be something that we bundle with that and use that funding and consultants and whatever that, we don't know what that's going to look like exactly yet, but if this is a topic of concern, we can make that a piece of this.
We're all gonna, like he said, we're all
County Public Health is also doing education programs, trying to work with schools. And again, to me, it's a whole bunch of disjointed efforts. There's not one collective clearinghouse for all this.
And I don't have to agree, but we are all talking to each other. So we've been involved with Flex work, we're involved with the public health work. Not that
my impression is everybody is talking to everybody.
I agree. Yeah.
And in the groups that I meet with, like we met with MyLog last night, all the mayors discussed it. All the mayors discussed theirs, and theirs. So I think it's already happened. But hey, me just as a
That's
council,
why we can't do more. We probably can't.
legislatively, I think that.
Yeah, I think the legislative, I think what Matt said of making sure we're just all aware of that. I agree, there isn't a central lead on it, and maybe that's just where.
There's no magic button that's just gonna make this great.
Right.
We gotta enforce it.
Yeah.
There has to be an education program, and all those things should be working together. And if we're not, all those groups are not sitting in one room talking that out, it's not going to happen.
Well, in our city, we've discussed all of those things, like an ordinance, an education.
But that doesn't carry it out through the entire east side of Polk County or the entire metropolitan.
Don't you have a city with a council and a mayor? Don't you do that? That's your job. I mean, that's what we're doing. We don't ask other people to do it for us. We do the work.
We do have the mechanisms through the Vision Zero Roundtable, through AT, the Activation Roundtable.
Sorry, we are
talking about we can,
Don't be sorry. If you didn't bring it up, I was bringing it up. I already talked about it before the meeting started.
It's one of the biggest issues we're dealing with. Well in hand, we won't see any injuries or deaths this year. I'm pickled.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Yeah, that's
The first part is correct, the second part is not. That's just bullshit. Yeah. But do the work. That's what you're like. Next.
All right, hearing no other discussion, our next meeting is gonna occur Thursday, August 6th at 11:30. If there's no other business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? You're adjourned. Thank you all.
here's a.